Good morning. I welcome you all in Metamorphic Pathology class. Today we are going to discuss the upper limits of metamorphism. You all know that the upper limits of metamorphism is reached when melting begins. Melting is initiated after metamorphic rocks have reached the amphibolite or granulite phases. This may occur on a very limited scale in the upper levels of the crust or on a large scale near the crust mantle boundary. The circumstances and degree of melting vary considerably as a function of temperatures, rock types, depth of burial, and the presence of H2O. So these are the you can say factors or the melting are the functions of the melting. Once again I repeat: temperature, rock type, depth of burial, and presence of H2O. Now let us consider first the possibility of melting of a metamorphic rock at shallow depths in the crust, say about 6 km or less, with pressure not exceeding 1.5 kilobar. This is typical contact metamorphic situation. Means when the depth is about 6 km and pressure not exceeding 1.5 kilobar pressure, this situation is of the contact metamorphic. As the geothermal gradient normally is not sufficient to cause melting at this depth, we can postulate an adjacent igneous intrusion approaching approaching intrusion once, or you can say one passes through series of zones indicative of higher and higher temperatures. Such zones might contain minerals such as albite epidote, then hornblende plagioclase, followed by potassium feldspars, cordierite, and other mantle. You can say your this that your sillimanite and andrusite. In the final zone, adjacent to this intrusive hydrous minerals, amphibole and mica are eliminated along with garnet, and melting may occur in presence of high temperature phases such as sanidine, tridymite, phosphorite, sillimanite, cordierite, or wollastonite. The metamorphic phases represented in metamorphism of this type is your Hornfels or Sanidine phases. Now, the amount of melting found in such cases, if present at all, is usually limited to this border zone or perhaps to genolis within the intrusives. There are several reasons for this general lack of melting. Although the temperatures of intrusions is high, perhaps it is more than, you can say, around 700 degrees centigrade for the granitic and 900 degree for the basaltic magmas. The country rocks, being fairly shallow, are relatively cool. This results in considerable dissipation of magmatic heat and steep thermal gradient, permitting only the thin border zone to at or near igneous temperatures. Furthermore, heat from the intrusion causes vaporization of the pore waters in the country rock, which results in chilling of the contact zone. Dehydration and decarbonation reactions in the country rock absorb heat, that is endothermic, and cause further cooling effect. Jaeger 1957 and also in 68 has calculated thermal gradient as a function of the country rock heat conductivity, shows that even neglecting effect of the endothermic reactions, the country rock often does not attain magmatic temperatures. Other factors involved in determining the amount of melting are the size of the intrusion, and the water content. A large intrusive cools over a longer period of time, allowing the formation of wider and less steep thermal areole. Water expelled from the intrusive could transfer considerable amounts of heat and cause great expansion of the thermal areole. In addition, most magma do not contain superheat, that is, heat that causes magmatic temperatures to significantly above the freezing temperatures. Thus, any process such as melting of the country rock cause crystallization and cooling of the intrusive. A final consideration is that the solidus temperature of the country rock may be above that of the temperature of the igneous intrusion. Deep within the crust, at medium to high temperatures and pressures, considerable melting can occur during orogenesis. A large masses of rock have been brought to elevated temperature and pressures. The process of melting as a result of extreme metamorphic condition is known as anastasis. Now, this is generally asked in the examination, anastasis and palingenesis. So, in very simple, or you can say the definition of anastasis is that the process of melting as a result of extreme metamorphic conditions is known as anastasis. So, if the melting begins, means the anastasis has started. If melting is complete, magmas, or you can say the magma is formed when cooled will yield a rock of typical igneous characteristics. In the case of partial melting followed by cooling, a rock is produced with the portions that retain some metamorphic characteristics and portions that appear to be igneous origin. Such rocks are called migmatites. What you are observing in the diagram, this is all these are migmatite stages. This is due to the partial melting. So, if melting is complete, once the melting is complete, magma is formed that when cooled will yield a rock typical of igneous characteristics. In the case of partial melting followed by cooling, a rock is produced with portions retain some metamorphic characteristics, other portions that appear to be igneous origin. Means these rocks, they have, you can see in general, some characters of igneous rocks and some characters of the metamorphic rocks, right? And appear to be and to such rocks we call as the migmatites. So what you are observing, these are all the cases of the migmatites. Migmatite, to you can say those who have joined late, migmatite is in metamorphic rocks that is produced in the extreme when the parent or the protolith is melted partially, and that melted part when cools forms the igneous characters, right, and the other the metamorphic. So this is, you can say, the hybrid rock which have the characters of both igneous and the metamorphic rocks, the migmatite. It should be pointed out that some migmatites have formed by solid state diffusion processes, that is called granitization. So granitization is a process means that by solid state diffusion which produce an igneous looking portion of that rock without the formation of melt. Hence the term migmatite should be used in a non-genetic sense. Typical migmatite structures that are shown here in the diagram, right? This diagram, these are typical migmatite structures. It is very difficult in many cases to distinguish between a rock that has resulted from partial melting and produced by plastic flow and solid state aggregation. As an example of occurrence of pegmatites, we will examine some effects of the Caledonian orogeny in the central Greenland, and these are the places where the pegmatites have been well studied, and the means the rocks in general, if you talk of this, taking the examples of different regions, that these have the, you can say, the dual evidence or dual characters of both igneous and the metamorphic rocks, right? Pegmatites appear to have been formed by a variety of mechanisms. If the pegmatites and, you can say, adjacent granitic material has formed, means pegmatites appear to have been formed by a variety of mechanisms. If the pegmatites and the adjacent granitic material has formed by granitization, that is, you can say, the influx of the material in the solid state, the following characters may be present. The various characters that present can be: number one, veins of felsic material show no dilation. This is important. Veins of felsic materials, that felsic composition, show no dilation. The next, second, you can say, contacts are gradational. The contacts will be gradational. Then third, relics of original sedimentary beds are present in an orientation with, you can say, comparative with the comparative, you can say, compatibility with the surrounding rocks. And then the fourth, the feldspar present are of the subsolvous type, means two alkali feldspars showing little to no perthetic exclusion, exsolution, means feldspar present are of the subsolvous type, two alkali feldspars showing little or no perthetic exsolution. And then the fifth and last, the mineralogy of the felsic portions is not in agreement with the composition produced by the partial melting of by experiments. So these are, you can say, the various, means these appear to have been formed by a variety of mechanisms. The pegmatite, but overall it is in the extreme state. If the pegmatites are formed by anataxis, we will expect, number one, the igneous and metamorphic portion should be together equal to the composition of adjacent metamorphic rock. Means the igneous and the metamorphic portion, that is the means that rock is composed of igneous and metamorphic portions, and they should be together equal to the composition of the adjacent metamorphic rocks. Then second, geothermometry should indicate magmatic temperatures. Then next, third, granitic material should be present in isolated patches. And then number four, the composition and the phases of the igneous part of the pegmatite should be compatible with partial melting experiments. Means so these will be the evidences in the as we when we will observe in the field. If the pegmatites are formed by anataxis, right, that is by partial melting, means the igneous and the metamorphic portion should together be equal to the composition of the adjacent metamorphic rocks. Second, geothermometry should indicate magmatic temperatures. Third, the granitic material should be present in isolated patches. And the fourth, the composition and the phases of the igneous part of the pegmatite should be compatible with partial melting experiments. The other is, if pegmatite is created as a result of metamorphic differentiation, that should show these will show these characters. First, the felsic and the mafic portion together should be similar in composition to adjacent rocks. It's very simple. Is metamorphic, if they are formed as a result of metamorphic differentiation, then the felsic and the mafic portions which are present in the pegmatites, they should be similar in composition to adjacent rocks. The mineralogy and textures both of felsic and mafic portions should appear to be of metamorphic origin. Felsic means the mineralogy of and the texture of both felsic and mafic portions, which are the parts. In this diagram you can see, this is the, you can see it here, this is the felsic part, right, and the dark one, this is the mafic part. So what is Here this is felsic, these are the mafic. These dark ones are the mafic parts and these lighter ones are the felsic parts. So the mineralogy and texture of both felsic and mafic portion should appear to be of metamorphic origin and formed at the same pressure temperatures. If the felsic portion of the migmatite is created by intrusion of igneous melt, what will be expected? The presence of dilating veins or dilation veins. The granitic veins often at an angle to the cystosity and perhaps more granitic material than expected to have been formed. So these are the different, you can say, the ways in which the migmatites can form, right? But what we are interested is that the upper limits of metamorphism means in general when we talk of this, because the upper limits of metamorphism will be naturally after what we have discussed in the that phases of your this, you can say the after the phases, the amphibolite phases and geothermal gradient normally, that should be sufficient enough. And ultimately the minerals like your metamorphic phases represented in metamorphic means hornfels or sanidite phases, and naturally the conditions they are at the different at a depth, or that should be more than at 6 kilometer and with 1 kilobar pressure, right? So one can understand that these migmatites, they are cases of an extreme metamorphism, and they have been these migmatites as such, or you can say the upper limits of this metamorphism are can be indicated by the of their migmatites. That's all for today. Thank you. We'll discuss some other our lecture on metamorphic pathology in next video. Thank you very much. See you.